Hi, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
So, what is that term? I'm trying to think of this term that where you purposely inflict pain upon yourself when you do something. Do you remember what that is?
I believe that would be called masochism.
Oh no.
And welcome back to another wonderful, exciting, maybe masochistic, that big word episode of Two Guys Talking About Records. And it is the broadcast where just two guys sit around and talk about records because really that's all we know. Don't ask me anything else. I mean, which is why we don't take questions and answers. But my name is Steve, and I am a record collector.
And my name is Jim, and I own a record store, but I've been known to collect from time to time too. But the record store owner part of me is what makes this episode so painful.
Yeah, yes. We've both had some fun experiences lately on seeing how much how much can you charge for a record? The sky's the limit, folks.
Apparently, doesn't matter what it is.
Now, it doesn't mean you're going to sell it, but you can charge whatever you darn well want.
Oh, okay. I'll until we get into the subject, but we both went to antique stores over the past couple weeks. So, holy cow, this is going to be a wild one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as this is the Vinyl Community Podcast, we do like to talk about pickups from the past week or so, things that we brought into our seemingly never-ending collections, and it's going to be tough for you to top last week. You had a stack about this big coming in. So.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. We're going to talk about pickups. Well, my pickup had to go in and get a timing change, the one that we just bought. So, that pickup. Okay,
not that pickup. The ones that the mailmen love you so much.
Yes, the mailmen do. Except I gave them a break. Okay, I did pick up Arrested Development. And not Arrested Development. Yeah, it is Arrested. Oh my God. I can't read. This Johnny just can't read. Arrested Development. And this was, I think, their first album there. 3 years, 5 months, and 2 days in the life of. I mean, what a title. But of course, this had that very popular Mr. Wendell, which I absolutely adore that song. This is just a neat time for rap when it became more socially conscious. It was kind of they're saying, okay, it doesn't have to be about violence and all that. We got a lot of problems that are within our community that we need to address in a more positive way. And kind of almost like hippie rap, you could say. And this wonderful album. I've been, wanting to get this, so got a repress. I don't think a vinyl press was even done in the U.S. By 93 when this came out, or I think 92, I mean, so many albums just weren't put on vinyl, especially rap. But in Europe, they're there. You can find them. But if I want a vinyl one out of Europe, it's worse than an antique store. So, jeez. And then this came a couple weeks ago. I hadn't shown it. This was the Third Man record release live. So this is a couple weeks old. This was the Third Man record of the quarter or whatever. And they have live broadcasts in here. And the vinyl, is there anything? I haven't even listened to this one yet.
Was that one of the vault pressings?
Yes. This is one of the vault pressings. So there we go. That's kind of vinyl. So we have on here live music from which I do love. Which that's a great one. Live music from Jack White in the Blue Room, and from Dinosaur Jr. So 3 live albums. For your enjoyment that were recorded at one of the Third Man record stores there. So I got to get around. Actually, since it's such a light week, I should have time to listen to it, though I'm told a package is on the way.
There is a package on the way, and another one after that, which we'll talk about when we finish up today.
Okay, all right. Well, what about you, Jim? You must have topped that.
I did indeed. From a little bit coming in, some fun stuff this week. First off, I had a little bit of VCLT. It doesn't happen very often, but
Yeah.
we get some VCLT. This is from a friend of mine online, Tom Neville. He is a customer also. He buys some stuff. And he sent me a copy after listening to our podcast, some of the episodes, and where we talked about some of the Christmas music that I've been getting into with John Fahey, as well as his early, very sparse blues albums. This is one from 1973 from John Fahey and his orchestra called After the Ball. Now, this is interesting. The Fahey stuff that we had talked about before, remember, that's one of those Grail albums, his first self-pressed one that they repressed and remixed a couple times after the fact. And that stuff is the Blind Joe Death is just a very sparse, just bleak, but also just intriguing blues album. This one really kind of crosses that borderline into almost Dixieland. I had trouble figuring this one out because it does feature some of that the acoustic guitar that Fahey was known for, but then he begins venturing into the use of banjo and pairs that with an orchestra to get a little Dixieland feel off of this. So it's definitely different, and it's a neat addition. After the Ball with John Fahey. I don't know if I'm going to find any of that online for the Spotify playlist or not, but we'll have to see. Secondly, a neat little collection come in with a lot of imports. So I got some UK imports I'm working on getting out here at the store. And you and I think, are both on the same boat when it comes to classical music. It's stuff that we like, but it's not it has to be the right one to add in.
Yeah.
I found this. This is and I'm gonna massacre the conductor's name on this again. Our tie coming in, Holst. And let me get that in there to make sure I get this. Gustavus Theodor von Holst, English composer, born in 1874, died in 1934 in London. And this is the one that he is, I think, probably most known for, and that is his symphony, The Planets.
Yeah.
This, I've heard of this and I've listened to some different versions of this before, but this one came through, and it's the BBC Symphony Orchestra's version of The Planets, and it is just in absolutely beautiful shape. It's got the Classics for Pleasure, the UK insert in there as well, but just great looking vinyl. Gave this a listen, and you know what? It's one of those instances where I decide I'm going to keep a classical one, because once in a while I go to that well just for simply clearing the mind and relaxing a little bit. And this is a great composition and a great version of this the symphony of The Planets.
Gustava, that's, you said he's from UK. Yeah, as English of a name as there is.
Wow. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum for this next one. This was when we get talking a little bit about antique stores, I did hit one. I'm not going to call this one an antique store. It was more of a secondhand store around the corner from the antique store that got me very, very angry. But I picked up a copy of Mark Farner's solo album with one of the greatest covers in the world. Mark Farner, of course, from Grand Funk Railroad. This is his self-titled solo album from 1977. And let me just zoom in on this a little here. He is just looking so majestic on top of that white horse and shirtless on the back. Mark Farner goes in 1973. This is an interesting album because it's I don't know if it's post Grand Funk. I think he was still in 73 at that point. But this has definitely got some funk feel to it along with the rock. I don't want to use the word disco yet in 73, but there's a feel to this that's a little bit of a departure from Grand Funk Railroad. Years ago, I think we talked about how on our YouTube channel that during the pandemic, I had done interviews with a lot of Michigan artists, and we put them on our YouTube channel. Mark Farner was one of them. And I don't think I put that in the cut, but I asked him specifically about this album cover. I said, come on, man, seriously. It was great. It was the coolest thing in the world at the time, just hanging out on a big white horse. So Mark Farner's self-titled solo album, Mark Farner, it's an interesting listen, but a cool addition to the Michigan collection.
Interesting, interesting's one of those words, Jim. it good or
It
bad?
is a word. And and then finally, I'm all over the map. So let's see. We have sparse blues and ragtime jazz with the symphonic classical music, some funky farner.
Kind of sounds like
What
one of
better?
my Sunday morning shows.
It is. What better way to kind of kick things further down that genre than Kraftwerk, Ralph und Florian.
That's a good one.
We had brought this in. This is a let's see. This is a 1975 pressing, so it's not the first press, but it's also not something that has been pressed on vinyl or repressed a lot past the 70s. So it's a nice copy of the third. I think this is the third Kraftwerk album, and it is on Vertigo Records, but it's not the full Vertigo Swirl label that I know that you're so cool. I'm looking for as
Yes.
well. Not a huge Kraftwerk fan. I do have, obviously, I've got a good copy of Autobahn that's been in the collection for a while. That's if you're going to own a Kraftwerk album, this is probably the one to have.
Yeah.
But in doing some reading on this, Ralph und Florian, this one, I guess after their first two albums, they really kind of began to hone their electronic sound down a little bit. And this is what led to the sound that is Autobahn. And I gave this a listen. And it is, I mean, obviously synth and very experimental, but it seems a little more structured, I think, than their earlier stuff.
Okay.
How big into these guys are you?
I have maybe 4 or 5 of their albums. I enjoy them. You know, their 70s output. I'd say Computer World was the very first one I ever bought. And I really liked that album quite a bit. A little more definitely structured, a little more, shall we say, almost poppy, but in a Kraftwerk way.
And it's a great way to put it. So this one, I think I'm going to be good with those two Kraftwerk in there. And I have always known that Autobahn, depending upon which version you get, the US versions are pretty decent. Finding German ones are where the collectability is at. But this one on Discogs for a 75 reissue on Vertigo came in mid-range in the $40 range and all the way up to $205.
Wow.
For some reason. So that was a decent find coming in. And you know, again, I'm not often in the mood, but you know, we'll play some of the Gary Newman and a little further down the line. I do enjoy some Stereolab, and I think that those all owe a great deal to what Kraftwerk laid the tracks for that type of music.
Definitely. Very true.
That is what I picked up. And for folks that are curious to listen in on what some of these things may sound like, especially the odder ones we've got tossing in every week, I do my best to put together a Spotify playlist so you guys can listen in on some samples of the music that we talk about. I'm not sure if that Third Man one's going to be on there, Steve, but
yeah,
if it is, we'll find it. And you can find that Spotify playlist link in the description on the Spotify channel description for this episode, as well as in the description on our YouTube channel. I don't know if Apple or any of the other podcasts carry the description forward, but all you got to do is a little bit of digging and you can find those Spotify playlists each week. They do make for fun listening too, if you go back a little ways, don't they? Some of the stuff we talked about.
Yeah, they're very good. Very good.
So before we get to, and I got to move a couple things around here, before we get to the subject at hand today, which is antique stores, a little topical news item. We're recording this on Sunday, the 11th of August. And just yesterday, I was seeing all sorts of posts on Facebook, a few different groups that I watch, asking questions and or complaining about Discogs being down, having some technical difficulties. And I will attest because, again, I use Discogs on a daily basis here at the store. And it didn't kick me out. It just said page inaccessible. You can't get to this. And I'm trying to do a few things here and there, and you just could not make it work. And did you experience any of that too?
Yeah, I did. I was in trying to put an album in, and I, doing a little research, and yeah, it did. It's the exact thing what you said. It happened, and I got in shortly afterwards. It didn't take forever to get back in, but yeah, definitely a little outage, which seems to be the norm wherever you go when it comes to the internet or whatever. Too much stuff happening around there.
Too much stuff. Well, this one I think was attributed Discogs has been touting internally and to certain users that they were rolling out updates. Stop me if you've heard this before. Rolling out updates to their marketplace system, and I think that this issue, they just had some bugs that happened during the bigger rollout. And I mean, there was that big Microsoft thing a couple weeks ago that affected everything around the country. It seems like so Discogs not connected to that, obviously, but same type of thing where they roll out an update. If that's indeed what happened, I don't know for certain, but yeah, definitely caused a little bit of an outage yesterday. So
yeah, in every job that I've had, one of the scariest terms is we're rolling out an update, and you just start to sweat. You go, oh, you get people to go, okay, here's what's going to happen. We're probably going to crash. So, here's the phone numbers you need to have. Get ready, be prepared, because we're doing an update that's going to make your life easier.
Here it comes. Hold on tight.
Hey. Always something. We've been testing it for months. Yeah, you've been testing in the office, not live.
Well, let's let the users get a hold. Hey, speaking of things that are extremely painful,
yeah.
The other day, I had a couple days off here from the store. My weekends are on Mondays and Tuesdays, and I decided to do a I'm going to blow off my responsibilities at home, like mowing the lawn and cleaning the garage and all that stuff, and decided to venture out a little bit from the Midland, Michigan area, and went to a couple of antique malls just to kind of see. It's been a long time since I did that kind of hunting around for vinyl. And I hit some towns not too far from Midland. One is Gladwin, just a little bit northwest of here, and Beaverton, which is not too far from there either, because I'd heard about this big antique mall in Beaverton that has a huge vinyl collection. So, but I started in the Gladwin area and hit a couple there, and it was about normal for the antique malls. I do have some images that I'm going to bring up here in a second when we get into this to show, but I left the first batch of them. I left with 2 records. And by the time I got to the bigger one in Beaverton, where they just had, thousands and thousands of records, including one whole room about the size of our dollar room, filled with a few thousand records that were organized very nicely. They were in plastic, and every single one of them was at least $10 over what the value should have been. But what was really maddening in that antique mall was when I dug a little bit deeper, because the notion of an antique mall is that it's not one store. It's several different little vendors have their spaces set up. And I think every single vendor is trying to cash in on this if they get a little bit of vinyl and they put it out there. And the further and further I dug through this antique mall, outside of the big batch of records, the one guy that deals specifically in records, the more frustrated and the more angry I got. And by the time I left, I was just like, some of this is criminal.
Yeah,
it was so, I was so angry, and I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be, because I'm a small business owner and I set the prices to what I think they should be set. And if you run a small business, you set the prices to what you think they should be set to. So,
before all the record stores came back, during the vinyl Wasteland years, there were no record stores around. When I moved to Midland, I would go down to Bay City. Bay City has some very large antique malls.
Yep.
And there was one I would go to, and everything was like $1 or $2. This is before vinyl resurgence. And I used to just come out with stacks, of records. It was exciting. Oh man, look at this! Wow, look at that! And they were in pretty good shape. Now I can say this: in the past few years, those days are long gone. You're not finding that kind of pricing anymore, as everyone's kind of wisened up, or it's like a Beanie Baby or something. Hey, this is going big. We don't know really much about it, but we know it's popular. Chalk up them prices. And yeah, the world's really changed, especially with antique malls. And there's probably people out there watching go, you know what? I'd still find deals. And no doubt you can, but it's a lot harder.
One of the things you hit on in that, and that's the idea of, is I really don't know too much about this, but
Yeah.
Everybody seems to be buying and selling. So I don't know too much about records, and let me start this off with a little bit of a chuckle here. The first one I went to, they didn't have very much, but they had some decent stuff, and it was organized by genre and somewhat alphabetized in through there. So I'm going through their rock and seeing a little bit of a little bit of stuff here and there. This is one of the first things. Let me just kick this in here. This I'd found at that first one is a Rod Stewart Never a Dull Moment, early press on this. And I've got 6 or 7 of these still in the store that have $2 or $3 on them, and they don't move. Not a lot of people buy Rod Stewart, but I don't know if you can see that tag, Steve. It is $20 for the cover only. There is no vinyl in there. So do you well, after the flood, do you need a cover for your Rod Stewart Never a Dull Moment?
Darn, I did not save that one. Shoot. Otherwise, I knew I could go get one.
So I got to chuckle out of that, and I was still in a decent enough mood where it wasn't really bugging me. But I got a little further, and I did pick up something from that first store that was reasonably priced for what it is. And again, this is the hypocrite in me saying, I'm buying this with all likelihood of reselling it. And what I picked up there, and I think it was around $10, was a copy of the Shangri-La's Leader of the Pack on Red Bird Records. So this is no slouch. This is where I found it to be on Discogs. And it pops in there at the $50 to $250 range. Now, does that mean we did that episode on Discogs values, and what that is, and I picked this up for about $10, and that was about par for the course for everything they had. But that leads into my idea that they don't necessarily know everything of what they're putting out there if they're just trying to put everything up at one price. Now, this one, decent enough cover. It's got some age and ring wear and edge wear on there as well. And then when you get into the vinyl, it is by far not a great it's not in great condition. I mean, it's got some deeper scratches. I know you can't quite see it on here. There's some scuffs and such on there. So in my mind, there's no way that this is worth that media inside of Discogs. But
yeah,
I picked it up simply because, I wanted to pick something up. I made that effort. You know what that's like, right?
Yeah.
And this one I recognize is a rare enough one, but that everything else they had at that was just run-of-the-mill stuff like that $20 the $20 cover for Rod Stewart. So we'll figure that one out. I'll give it a test play and give it a good cleaning and see where it lands here at the store. But the funny thing was, I mentioned that this first store had their stuff separated by genre, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I worked my way to the country, even though I know I'm not going to get anything in the country. I just like looking through it to see if there's anything. And you're getting the Webb Pierce and just the run-of-the-mill old honky-tonk country stuff. But then in the middle of the country records, I come up with which is obviously a country record, because it says country on there. It's Big Country and The Crossing. So I got a chuckle out of that. But that again, maybe somebody misfiled it. I don't know. Maybe they just didn't pay too much attention as they were putting
I'm sure they didn't know. They did not know.
And this one I think was $12 in the store, and I picked it up simply because it's a good one to have. But again, the vinyl on this is not the greatest. So where I'm going to make a little bit on that Shangri-La's, I'm going to lose probably $5-7 off the Big Country. The country version of that album.
Yeah, the country. They put the Post-it on here. This is the country version of Big Country. Yeah, and let's see, the antiques, those people that have them oftentimes, they can be experts in something else within that store. That's their love. But since it's an antique store, I got all this, and they hear, well, this is really big. Well, okay, if I see it, I should start bringing that in because people are asking for it. I don't know anything about it, but but then people go into antique stores and buy whatever, it's about reliving your past. I mean, that's kind of the fun of going into an antique store. I was like looking at the toys and go, God, I used to have that. How much?
Yeah.
I threw that away. Wow.
I found myself at the Gladwin one standing a little too long over an old Victrola
Uh,
that looked like it was in fantastic shape, but it had a $500 price tag on it. And I thought, well, let's see. I already have a Victrola in the store, so I don't know as if I can justify that purchase. Not to mention getting it back. But no, you're right. And there was a lot of stuff in there, but it's one of those things where you're just experts in a lot of stuff, but master of none when it comes to those, if that's the case. And that first store really kind of embellished that, especially when you get down to that $20 cover of Rod Stewart. Now you hit up an antique store recently too, you said.
Yeah, I've done a few in my travels as I've been looking for a record store. In fact, Thursday I have video from one, but there was one I was up, and it was up in the mountains a little bit more, kind of a very touristy type place. Really neat store, a lot of super cool stuff. But now this is a community that has a little more money. So I'm in there and looking through the records, and they decided that really the price that records sell is $49.99. Just whatever, it's a Led Zeppelin. Well, it must be worth $49.99. There was nothing, believe me, there was nothing special on this Led Zeppelin. It wasn't like in primo condition or anything. And that was album after album, $49.99. Once in a while, you find some 25. If they thought it was really valuable, it went up to $89.99. It's like, what? What's going on? It just wasn't rare stuff. There's just nothing that was like, oh my God, I have to have that. But people were thumbing through, and if they don't know and they got money, well, hey, I heard this is popular. Wow, this must be good. Look how expensive it is. They might buy it. But the owner seemed kind of crudge-mungy, cranky, because everyone was going into his shop looking and buying nothing. Because that pricing carried on to everything else within that store. Really neat stuff. It's just like, wow. Okay, I guess you must have some special people that shop there, but
And the thing is too, for them to, I think, continually justify those type of pricing on the vinyl especially, but probably with everything else, you'd almost have to have like a record of sales. And I do that here at the store. There are certain titles that no matter when I get them, they sell. So, that the demand says, okay, that's worth $7. That's worth $10 versus every single Rod Stewart album, which I've got multiple. Jackson Browne, Linda Ronstadt, I have no end of those. And I would routinely see those in this antique mall for $20, $30, $40.
I went to this other one, and they had, they had a bunch of Barry Gibb. I think it was going for about $13 a copy, kind of beat up and stuff. Sean Cassidy also, going in for the double-digit amounts. I'm just looking, dollar bin, except theirs is, a lot more expensive, and just, no covers on, just beat up. Stevie Wonder, fulfilling his first final. I think there's supposed to be a 45. Of course, it wasn't in there. We're trying to get, almost $40 for this.
Wow.
Not understanding what it is, but there were a lot of people. This was in Colorado Springs. Many of them speaking languages that I'm not quite sure what. And shopping these, looking, and they're kind of excited. We're in America. We got look at these records and stuff. And I'm just going, whoa, oh boy.
And again, to more power to them. If they're selling them at those prices, I don't see them saying, why should they come down? But
yes, absolutely.
To me,
nice owner too. Great owner, but it's like, ooh, wow.
Well, let me share with you a few more. I took some pictures, and this was in the second place, and not this one. The Rod Stewart was the one first that I'd seen. Now, this was also in the first store. This is a box of 45s that no sleeves or anything. I pulled a few out. These are the types of 45s that I put out for free, and they were $15 a piece in this box. And we're talking absolutely nothing special whatsoever in any of those. Let's see. Here I go on to the bigger antique mall, and the first. Let me back off of this for a second. In the first section of the antique mall that had the majority of the records, the actual record portion. I know the gentleman. He's come into our store, and he's rated our dollar bins over the past couple of years, and now I know where they're going. They go up there and they get that price tag on them. Again, more power to you if you can sell them on there.
Yeah,
The only thing, yeah, that's I got $1 a piece for them, which was good for me because they sit around here.
Yeah.
The only thing in that section of the store that really piqued my interest was a 12-inch promo of REM's "Can't Get There From Here." And I'm looking at this, I'm like, it was in nice condition. The cover was nice, and I like my promos. But there was a $25 price tag on it, and I was having some difficulty getting into my cell service at that point. So I carried it around with me until that page loaded, and then come to find out, according to Discogs, there's a bunch for sale in the $6 to $7, $8 range.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, that's way too much. So I said, well, if I really, really, really want this, after shipping, I can still get it cheaper.
Yeah.
There. So, but then I ventured further into this antique mall, and this is where things started to go off the rails for my attitude. Here we have a hot August night, $45.
Look at that cover, though. Look good. That's like VG plus.
And I didn't even bother looking at the vinyl. Lobo. We have this in here. I'm trying to remember the price on that. I think that's $15. Again, nothing tremendous on there.
Nope.
Barry Manilow, $9. I've got probably 10 of those in our dollar room right now. So maybe they should make their way up there for $10. Another Neil Diamond, $20 for Stones. Engelbert. Okay, let me tell you a story about this. $10 on an Engelbert greatest hits. These, whenever I see these make it into our mystery bags, essentially 10 cents a piece. I give them away to get rid of them. So I'd be curious to know if that one sold for $10 up there.
You probably bought crazy. One of your mystery bags, and that's where you got it from.
That could be. That's a great 10 cents to $10. What's the markup there, Steve?
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned also without covers. There's a couple here. Sounds of Silence, Simon and Garfunkel. Yes, it's a Columbia 2i. $7 on it without the cover. Iffy. Yeah. Same thing with this one here.
It's a test pressing. That must be a test pressing.
That could be. Yeah, right. That's the ticket. Doors, Strange Days, $8 on that one with no cover. And I didn't look at the vinyl, but if the vinyl's pristine, possibly, but even then, it's like, it looks like an earlier pressing Electra.
If that doesn't have a cover, if there's an antique, somebody was just laying around in their place, and I would almost bet they didn't clean it.
That's a fairly safe assumption. As we get further into this, you'll see what I mean. I hit the Beatles section. This was in another booth. This is a Beatles rubber sole, and there's a $75 price tag on that. And you can see what the cover looks like. But here we take a little closer look at the vinyl, and it's just absolutely, I would put that in a good condition. I don't even know if I could get that to a good plus. Yeah. I mean,
Beatles by far in an antique store are the most overpriced records. Over Elvis, over anything. Everyone I go into, they want exorbitant amount because it's the Beatles. So we heard, it's the Beatles. So it must be worth more than everything else. Not the fact that there is 1 billion of them out there.
Yep. Now, again, normally, if I were to get something like this in the store, condition plays a huge role, but also we would narrow this down. Looking at that is an early capital. So that could very well be an early or first press in there. But in that condition, no, absolutely no. Meet the Beatles, $75 price tag on this one as well. And if you can kind of see, this one is just as hacked up. Maybe good plus, we'd get around into that one. So that one's still a little crazy. Okay, final one here. There was a Beatles 65. I just have the one picture. $95 price tag on this. And the picture does not do that justice. There's writing on the label. The cover, I didn't take a bigger picture of that, but the cover was not the best of shape. This one, though, in looking at the vinyl, I don't know as if I would have even attempted to put a test play on this with my needle. I just don't think that, it would have done more harm to my turntable just to test play something like this. But again, $95 was just absolutely outrageous in my mind. I mean, but to your point, it's the Beatles, it's Elvis, it's the Doors. It's got to be worth a crap ton of money.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just name. So, well, we heard that's popular. We know that's popular. So, maybe people will spend. I just can't see that happening. And of course, you're in two areas that don't have record stores, or if anybody's around there, this is where you go unless you want to travel some.
Well, yeah, you're talking in this case, the city of Beaverton and Gladwin. They are a half hour plus from Midland. They're equally further to Mount Pleasant, and then Traverse City is the only other place with record stores further points north that has legit commercial independent record stores, and that's much further away. So I guess if you're a smaller town like that and you want records, it's what you're going to pay for those.
Yeah, which is sad, but you charge what you want. That's what business is about. And
this actually, I think, ties into a larger question, which we have talked on this podcast. We talked about on the podcast before, with new vinyl in particular, because it's going to roll downhill. The price of new vinyl continues, despite some efforts like with those now playings that we've talked about, the compilations, to keep their prices down. If you're a named artist, a popular artist, somebody that's on the upswing, that vinyl is going to be $45 to $50 now for a double, and everything's got to be a double LP, of course.
Yeah. We're only going to put 3 songs on one side, but it's a double LP. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
The new Billy Strings, for example, there's one coming out here in a month or so that is at the $50 price mark, and it's a double LP, and it's Billy Strings. He's a great artist, but there's got to be a breaking point. Back in April at Record Store Day, we had one of the hottest items on Record Store Day was a 7-inch from Chapel Roan, and that was one that was rationed. We only had one here at our store, and the young man that got in line at 2 p.m. the afternoon before we opened at 8 a.m. on Friday was the one that got that one copy. And now that copy of that Chapel Roan 45 was fairly pricey on Discogs. She's now releasing, I just saw an announcement for a full album that's coming out. I think it come out, but they're a vinyl pressing of this now. And this one is in the $55 range. But again, a hot new artist just snagging onto that. So my thoughts are, and maybe you want to have some insight on this, is as long as the new vinyl prices continue to do what they're going to do for these hot artists, is there any reason that used vinyl prices would not do the same?
No, it's going to follow suit. People see that, and even when you think, okay, eventually, hey, I'm going to sell off that new item. Well, you're going to try to get your money back for it, but it just keeps pushing things up. Now you hope that these these reissues that they've been doing that are really inexpensive, that maybe they will take off even more. And I know you've been kind of betting on that part of the stock market, that these are going to be doing quite well, and it sounds like they have been doing well in your store. People are very receptive of paying a lot less for music. But it is getting tough with this new stuff coming out. I buy a lot of stuff off Bandcamp, and generally on Bandcamp, I can get the things, $20 some, for some great albums. It just, a lot of times you have shipping that can kind of, especially it's coming out of Europe, it kind of it hits you, but it's better. And it seems to me that a lot of this pricing that I see actually coming out of Europe is a better price than what we have in the U.S.
Well, something like with Bandcamp also, that's a more direct line to the artists. They're getting a little bit more.
Very true.
And for the most part, that's not major label stuff either. That's self-pressed or smaller indie labels. Mm-hmm. So they can control their pricing because there's no corporate ladder with which they have to kind of pay homage to with the bucks on the way up the ladder.
Well, yeah, and we think about, these reissues, they keep going up in price and stuff like that. They get higher and higher. This deals with music. It's not a record, but I bought this at Barnes and Noble. It's REM, so it's all about REM, a whole magazine dedicated to REM. It's past articles of REM. They've already been written from the past. And I didn't even look at the price. I just brought it up there to buy it. Okay. And my wife, as we're leaving, she goes, boy, that was awful expensive. This book was only this. And I go, well, how much was that? $19. $19 on articles that were already written. They went through their archives, put it together. So there was nothing new on it. I mean,
it's like the greatest hits.
Yeah, it is like a greatest hits. Exactly. Why do we make a lot? Because some people don't look at the freaking price. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. But, even, record magazines like record albums have been, going up and up. And yet viewership, what's happening? They're all crashing, they're falling apart. But it has to happen. I guess vinyl's still looking for the breaking point, Jim. It seems we're moving up. All right, let's try 50. All right, we sold a bunch at 40. Try 50. Let's see what goes on. And, it will keep going until that happens.
It's going to, because like I said, all the bigger named artists now, where they would have been 35 for double LP a year or two ago, the norm now is 45, if not 50 or 52. I think a lot of them are coming in at. And
we're talking about at 35. We're going 35. God, what the heck?
Well, to be honest, I have noticed that is kind of, I can't say it's dropped off with the pre-orders, but you get an artist who will go back to Billy Strings, very popular here in Michigan, very popular here in the store. I've got a decent amount of pre-orders on the Billy Strings, and I'm doing what I can to bring that price point down a little bit, because these are customers that I know, and I know they'll come back and they'll buy extra stuff. So we knock that down as far as I think we can to still make a buck or two on them, but still get that out there under that $50 mark.
Yeah.
The Eminem album that's upcoming too, that one is in the $40+ range, and I've got 10, 12 pre-orders on that. So some of the artists, I think, maybe as long as they can keep commanding that, and I don't even think it's the artists, I think it's the labels.
Yeah, I agree. I totally think it's the labels trying to get that. I mean, there may be a few artists that will give us some more bucks, but I think for the most part, it comes down to the other end, where the labels are trying to get their money. The artists are going to make it through touring and stuff like that,
Yeah.
or however else. But yeah, it's that's kind of crazy. And again, you get less and less records. You wouldn't know that from last week, the albums I showed, but yeah.
Or next week.
Or this week, there's less and less. See,
there is. But that, again, to what we were talking about with the antique stores, that does roll itself downhill.
Yeah.
Because if people are paying $50 for this album, well, then why can't I pay $10 for a Barry Manilow, or a Neil Diamond, or $20 for a Rod Stewart cover?
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't know, and I can't say for certain, how those things are. So I'd have to go back in a couple weeks to see what's still there. Yeah. And I'm not likely to do that. It's not something that I'm going to do. Now, I did mention that, I went around the corner from that big antique mall as I was getting ready to leave, and I took a back way out and back home, and I happened across a secondhand store. I don't think they call it an antique store. They call it collectibles. But when I went in there, I mean, they had clothes and knickknacks, sports cards, things like that, and just household items. And I thought, okay, what the heck? So I wheeled it back in, went inside, and he had 2 crates of records. I'll look at them. How much are these? They weren't marked. $2 a piece. So, I picked up a couple of things for the store. Just some decent stuff that's probably in the $3 to $4 to $5 range, and I got them for $2 a piece. So there's my markup. But I had fun buying records, and that's kind of what I wanted to do on that little trip.
Yeah, I was talking to our friend Michael, out of Detroit, and there's a secondhand store down in down Detroit, Finders Keepers, which I've found some good stuff, but his albums are so incredibly high priced. Michael went in there last night and goes, I couldn't find anything that was I thought was affordable, that was correctly priced, and at least you found something. I would be traveling to these little small towns when I was in Michigan, just checking out these little stores. And for the most part, it was all way, way overpriced. And I would go into booth after booth, and it's like, who can charge the most? I'm pretty sure I can charge more than this guy here. And if it was cheap, it was terrible. It just god awful. Now I don't know. You didn't show any 101 strings what they were asking for those.
No, I did not. The Engelbert Humperdinck was close enough for me on a $10 one. So again, it boggles the mind. But to their point, these are small business owners. I'm a small business owner. If I felt like putting $50 on something that I got for 10 cents, then I can do that if I want. Yeah. I won't, because I like selling records. I don't like sitting on records for a long time, but that's just me. And we're not, Midland is not you remember well, it's not a huge city. No. And we're the only record store here. We've got a great record store in Bay City and a couple great ones down in Saginaw that are within our sphere of 15 to 20 miles away from each other. So we don't fall into that notion of being further away. But at that same token, I like selling records. I don't like sitting on them, because the more I sell, the more I can bring in and make more people happy by getting some good deals. But
yeah, and
am I the oddball here?
No, I think some of these records, these antique malls, just I got a booth. If I sell, I sell. If I don't, I don't. Super cheap or whatever here, and if I do, boy, did I make a lot of money. So.
The secondhand shop, then that's where I got the Mark Farner, by the way. I picked that up in there for $2 for my collection. I asked him, so do you have any other records? He goes, oh, I do. I get estates. I just don't have any out available right now. I thought, that's cool. And he mentioned, he goes, right around the corner is that antique mall. You want to go check that out? And I said, yeah, I went there first. I said, their prices are a little outrageous. He goes, and the guy sighed. He goes, yep, I don't think they like me very much, because I just get these and put them out for $2. And, who sold records that day? To me, at least. The $2 guy that was friendly about it.
Sure. But, if the one guy sells one of his records, he just sold a whole crate of records that the other guys. So,
that's true. Maybe they go there and buy it for $2.
He's not going for quantity. He's just, if I sell a couple, I did it.
And keep in mind, too, that none of these have been cleaned, and they all need to be inspected and checked over and detected and all that good stuff.
Buyer beware. And no doubt some people still find good deals at them. I see that on videos. I was in an antique store, but I see less and less of it.
It's like going to thrift stores, few and far between, but they're out there. I guess if you find them, great. And if you feel like paying $95 for a scratched up Beatles record, go for it.
Yeah.
But my advice would be, check out your friendly neighborhood record store first to see what they've got in their bargain bins.
Yes, very true. Wow.
So I'm very curious, how do you folks feel about antique store vinyl? Is it something that is maddening to you, or do you just do it for the enjoyment of the dig, or do you do what I did? And again, maybe it's just me, Steve. I came out of that extremely frustrated, just grumpier than all hell. I was that curmudgeon-y old man going stuff for that vinyl.
Jim, when I usually leave those, like that one are charging $49, I was just kind of laughing just out loud. That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. So best of luck.
More power to you there, friendo. But let's share your experiences with us, if you would. Head over to our Facebook page, look for Two Guys Talking About Records, and let us know what you think about antique store vinyl. You can also comment on the Spotify episode as well as the YouTube episode. But very curious to see what some of your experiences would be, because we know where we stand on it. And that was my quarterly trip. I don't think I'm going to do that again for a little while, just for my own sanity purposes.
Yeah. You did not come back with a lot of inventory.
I did not, but that wasn't the point. It was the collector side of me once in a while. I just like the thrill of the dig, like any of us do.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Until it turns into a nightmare.
You got it. Wow.
So until next week, you have been listening to two guys, complaining about records today. How's that? My name is Jim, and I own a record store.
And I'm Steve, a record collector.
Until next week, you folks have a great one. As always, Steve, great talking with you, sir.
Same with you, Jim. Always enjoy it. Bye, everyone.